March 28, 2026. Boston Harbor, Conley Terminal. At the pier sits a black hole 377 feet long, and a brass band is playing as if it is sending her off to a wedding. A few hundred yards away across the water, a tugboat slowly pulls a wooden sailing ship with gunports past the scene. This is the USS Constitution, the oldest commissioned warship on the planet. She has been part of the Navy for 228 years. Two ships of the United States Navy met in one harbor, and between them lies the entire history of naval warfare. One once fired cannonballs at Barbary pirates. The other is capable of wiping out the air defense system of an entire country without ever showing itself to anyone. The black hole is the USS Massachusetts, America's newest nuclear-powered attack submarine, and on the day of the ceremony, the spectators on the pier saw, at most, 10% of her body. The other 90% was already hiding underwater. Somewhere in Moscow and Beijing that day, people were carefully reviewing satellite images, and the main number they cared about was not her length, not her tonnage, and not her price. 0. That is exactly how much noise this boat is supposed to make underwater, because everything she can do, hunt, spy, strike with missiles, rests on one foundation. She has to be the quietest thing in the ocean. And this is where the most interesting part begins. Welcome to the channel for the wealthiest.
Luxury life.
Let us start with the money, because the numbers here are almost obscene. About $3.5 billion for a single boat. The contract under which she was built was worth $17.6 billion for 10 submarines, and at the time it was signed, it was the largest shipbuilding deal in the history of the United States Navy. Inside is an S-9G reactor, designed to run for 33 years without a single refueling. Think about that. Over that same period, you would refuel your car roughly 4,000 times. This boat will not pull into a gas station once in her entire life. The crew is 135 people who do not see the sun for months at a time. Her submerged displacement is roughly 8,600 US tons, more than a World War II-era destroyer. Her underwater speed is over 25 knots. Her depth is far beyond 780 feet. And exactly how far beyond that, the Navy politely does not specify. There is also a detail that few people noticed. The boat's sponsor was Sheryl Sandberg, the same woman who spent years as the #2 person at Facebook. A woman from Silicon Valley smashed a bottle against the hull of a machine built to disappear. The irony is that one of them helped build an empire that knows everything about you. The other was built so that nobody knows anything about her. And already the next morning after the ceremony, Massachusetts went underwater, into a place her captain will not record in any public document. A ship built from halves. Strange fact, this boat was built by two competing companies at the same time in two different states about 500 miles apart. The Newport News Shipyard in Virginia and Electric Boat in Connecticut divide every Virginia-class submarine like a cake. One builds certain hull sections, the other builds the rest, and then the gigantic finished modules, already packed with equipment inside, are joined together into one. It sounds like a recipe for disaster, but in reality, it is the only way to produce nuclear submarines at the pace required. It is also insurance. If the country loses one shipyard, the other will keep the program alive. The keel of Massachusetts was laid in December 2020 at the height of the pandemic, so the ceremony took place by video link. For the first time in history, the name of a submarine was welded under applause coming from laptops. In May 2023, she was christened. In October 2025, she made her first dive during sea trials. In November, the Navy accepted the ship. In March 2026, the flag was raised, more than 5 years from the first weld to active service. And every hour of that construction cost money. When you break it down, the boat was earning the cost of her own berth at nearly $2 million per day. What exactly was all that money paid for? For one single quality. I will explain which one right now. The rule everything depends on. Undersea warfare is insultingly simple. Whoever hears first wins. Everything else is paperwork. A quieter boat detects a louder one from a greater distance. A quieter boat shoots first, and the noisy one does not even have time to understand that the battle has already begun. It learns that only at the moment a torpedo settles onto its course. No duels, no second chance. Russia's Yasin-class submarines are the best machines Moscow has underwater. China's Type 093 boats are Beijing's advanced hunters. These are serious machines, honestly. But in exercises, the same awkward scene repeats again and again. A Virginia-class submarine is found only when she herself decides to be seen. And as you understand, she rarely decides that. So here is the $3.5 billion question. How do you make a steel tube weighing roughly 8,600 US tons sound quieter than the ocean around it? The answer starts at the stern, at the place where this boat is supposed to have a propeller. Supposed to, but does not. The most secret detail on board. Imagine a Soviet submarine captain sometime around 1985. His propeller is hammering the water at high revolutions. The tips of the blades move so fast that they literally tear the water apart. Behind each blade, tiny vacuum bubbles boil up and immediately collapse. Every collapsing bubble is a click. Millions of clicks become a roar. That roar travels through the ocean, and 100 miles away, an American acoustic operator puts down his coffee. He recognizes that signature. It has been played on training tapes. The Soviet captain has just introduced himself to the entire United States Atlantic Fleet, and he does not even know it. This is called cavitation, and it is the main enemy of every submariner. That is exactly why Massachusetts does not have a conventional propeller. Instead, she has a pump jet propulsor, a rotor with blades hidden inside a fixed ring-shaped shroud. A normal propeller is like a ceiling fan running at full power in the middle of a quiet room. Everyone hears it. A pump jet is the same fan but sealed inside the wall. All the turbulence is dampened inside the shroud before it has time to tell the ocean anything. The result is that the boat can go faster without starting to make noise. Usually a submariner has to choose speed or silence. The Virginia-class boats were allowed not to choose. The exact number of blades, their pitch, the internal geometry of the shroud, this is the most closely guarded secret on the entire ship. When the boat goes into dry dock, the stern is covered with curtains, and workers without special clearance do not even have the right to look in that direction. Not touch, look. But the stern is only the beginning. Run your hand along the rest of the hull, and you will realize you are not touching steel at all. The skin that swallows sound. You are touching rubber. The entire outside of the hull is covered with anechoic tiles, rubber panels about the size of a dinner plate permanently bonded to the steel. Why? Because the enemy has active sonar. It sends out a pulse and waits for the echo. A bare steel tube hundreds of feet long responds to such a pulse like a cathedral bell, and the captain's first warning may already come in the form of a torpedo on the screen. Rubber breaks that pattern. Shout in a tiled bathroom and the sound snaps right back into your face. Shout inside a recording studio with soft walls and the sound simply drowns. That is what these tiles do to enemy sonar. The pulse arrives, gets trapped, and does not come back. And hidden inside the hull is a third trick, and it may be the most beautiful one. One loose engine bracket on thousands of tons of submarine, and a Russian acoustic operator 37 miles away suddenly has something to listen to. That is why on the Virginia-class boats, the entire propulsion plant, turbines, pumps, reduction gears, everything does not sit directly on the hull. It sits on a floating platform with shock absorbers. A room built inside another room. The machinery runs, vibrates, lives its own life, but its trembling physically does not reach the steel skin. The steel stays silent, and that silence buys the boat the most expensive thing in undersea warfare: time. The reactor does not need fuel for 33 straight years, which means Massachusetts can position herself at the crossroads of someone else's sea lanes and simply wait for weeks, for months. The Russians have spent 20 years trying to reproduce this package of technologies. On paper, the Yasen has come close, but paper is not the ocean. Still, being invisible is only half the craft. The other half is seen for yourself, and the way Massachusetts sees breaks every submarine movie you have ever watched. The death of the periscope. Night. A hostile coastline. Above the black water, a mast the thickness of a coffee can rises for a couple of seconds. The camera on top makes a full rotation. The thermal imager captures a patrol boat 8 miles away. The signal's intelligence receiver sucks in encrypted radio traffic from the shore. All the data runs down through fiber optics to the place where, at a depth of almost 65 feet, the captain is looking at a flat screen. The acoustic operator sees the same image. The weapons officer sees the same image. Nobody presses an eye against an eyepiece. Nobody spins around shouting bearings. The scene from The Hunt for Red October is dead. For 100 years, submarines had periscopes, tubes with lenses and mirrors that physically passed through the pressure hull. That tube dictated the architecture of the entire ship. The control room had to sit directly beneath it, and the captain had to stand personally at the eyepiece. That is why every old submarine movie is filmed in the same cramped room, where one person has occupied the boat's only eye. Massachusetts has no periscope at all. She has 2 photonix masts that do not pierce the pressure hull. The difference is like the difference between a telescope you have to walk up to and a drone streaming a 4K image to any screen in the building. The control room moved to the middle of the hull, where there is more space, and the entire watch team sees the same thing at the same time. Decisions that used to take minutes are now made in seconds. But the mast works only near the surface. Deeper down, the boat hunts by sound. And this is where things go beyond common sense. Ears almost a mile long. You are in a dark room. Something moves. Instinctively, you turn your head. Your brain uses the difference of tiny fractions of a millisecond between your right ear and your left ear to calculate where the sound came from. Massachusetts does the same thing, except her ears stretch across more than 300 feet of hull and almost a mile behind her. In the bow is a giant aperture array, thousands of hydrophones packed into a horseshoe-shaped structure that replaced the old spherical sonar domes. That is the main hearing system. Along both sides are long strips of sensors, turning the entire hull into one measuring ruler. The longer the baseline, the more accurate the bearing. And behind the stern, the boat tows a TB-29A array on a cable almost a mile long. It listens to the ocean away from the carrier's own noise. Your ears give you stereo, enough to understand in a bar whether someone called you from the left or from the right. Massachusetts hears in surround sound with subwoofers, like in a movie theater. An enemy that does not hear her first loses the fight before it begins, and almost nobody hears her first. There is also a touching detail. The acoustic operators on this boat listen to humpback whale songs more often than most marine biologists. Ask a submariner what a humpback sounds like at 3 in the morning in the North Atlantic, and he will have a detailed opinion. But finding the target is only half the job. You also have to be able to do something about it. And here, the boat has 2 answers. One for a submarine 20 miles away, and another for a building nearly 1,000 miles inland from the coast. 12 calls that cannot be answered. A hatch on the forward deck opens. A tomahawk, launched by compressed gas, punches through the surface, hangs in the air for a fraction of a second, its booster ignites, and then the crew's turbojet engine starts. The missile hugs the ground at an altitude of about 100 feet and heads toward its target at 547 miles per hour. And the boat is no longer at that point in the ocean. That is how Massachusetts fires all 12 of her Tomahawks, from 2 large launch tubes sunk into the deck behind the sail, 6 missiles in each. Early Virginia-class boats carried 12 separate tubes. Starting with the 3rd block, they were replaced by 2 larger launch tubes, and Massachusetts, a 4th block boat, inherited that layout. The entire missile load can leave the deck in less than 3 minutes. One missile weighs around 1.5 US tons, carries a 1,000-pound warhead, and lands within a few yards of the point assigned to it by coordinates. From the Arabian Sea, the boat can reach Tehran. From the Philippine Sea, she can reach Beijing. At the same time, she herself does not surface, does not move closer, and does not say hello in any way. Each Tomahawk costs about $2 million. A full salvo is a $24 million decision that the submarine commander makes in 60 seconds. If he chooses the wrong targets, the Navy will spend a year explaining itself to Congress. If he hits them, an entire country may wake up without a radar network by morning. 12 buildings cease to exist, and nobody knows where the strike came from until everything is already over. But that is a tool for long-range work. For close-range work, for enemy ships and submarines, something even more terrifying has been saved. The torpedo that breaks backbones. Imagine a warship of roughly 10,000 US tons moving at 20 knots. From below, a Mark 48 torpedo creeps toward it, guided by an extremely thin wire stretching all the way back to the submarine. The operator is literally steering it the whole way. In the final mile, the wire is cut loose. The torpedo's own sonar switches on. Lock, acceleration, final dash. And here is the key part. It does not hit the side. It passes exactly under the keel, beneath the middle of the hull, and explodes there. A warhead of roughly 660 pounds creates a gas bubble the size of a house directly under the bottom. The bubble throws the middle of the ship upward. A fraction of a second later, it collapses and the hull drops into the void where water had just been. Take a pencil and snap it across your knee. That is what happens to the ship, except the pencil weighs thousands of tons and has people on it. The ship breaks its own spine. 2 or 3 such explosions along the keel and it folds in half. In the bow of Massachusetts are 4 21-inch torpedo tubes for the newest version of the Mark 48 ADCAP Mod 7, almost 19 feet long, moving at more than 55 knots, with a range of around 31 miles. And there is a grim detail in this story. The last time an American submarine sank an enemy warship was in 1945. For 80 years, the Mark 48 has been lying in the tubes and waiting. Patience, as they say, is a virtue. But what is all this metal for? What does the boat actually do down there in the darkness? Here are her 3 trades. First trade, hunting. Imagine Massachusetts on the 3rd month of a deployment. She is hanging motionless in the GIUK gap, the choke point between Greenland, Iceland, and Britain, through which any Russian submarine must pass if it wants to break out into the open Atlantic. A Yesen is moving south from the Kola Peninsula. Its commander is sure he has not been detected, and against almost any navy on the planet, he would be right. But Massachusetts's towed array catches the signature: weak. So weak it could pass for a fishing trawler. It did not. The American boat does not switch on active sonar. That would be like turning on a spotlight and shouting, "I am here." She stays silent and simply follows. Meanwhile, the target track spreads across the network to a P-8 Poseidon patrol aircraft in the sky, basically a Boeing 737 with torpedoes in its belly, to a second Virginia-class submarine 50 miles away, and to a carrier strike group far to the south. Everyone knows where the Russian is. The Russian knows nothing. And here is the cruelest part of the story. He calmly completes his deployment, returns to base, writes a report about a successful patrol, and files papers for promotion. He was watched the entire way. He will never find out. He will retire in complete confidence that he passed through cleanly. Second trade, eavesdropping and visitors from the deep. Now move the boat to a hostile coast. The photonix mast sticks out of the water for a few seconds and sucks in everything it can. Emissions from coastal radars, encrypted military channels, conversations between controllers, somebody's call to his wife. For weeks, sometimes for months, hard drives fill with someone else's radio traffic, including the boring kind, because in intelligence work, what is boring today can become decisive tomorrow. A satellite passes over a point once a day, and it is visible to anyone who knows how to calculate orbits. But this library lies a few dozen miles off the beach and appears on no one's radar, no one's sonar, and no one's horizon. But it also has a door worth discussing separately. Built into the hull is a lockout chamber. SEAL combat swimmers can leave the boat while it remains underwater, 200 feet deep. Darkness, cold, and the submarine does not even slow down. It keeps moving along its route. For larger groups, a removable hangar with a mini submarine inside is attached to the back of the boat. It carries the fighters the final miles to the shore. The only thing left on the surface is a light ripple that disappears in less than a minute. By the time the swimmers step onto the beach, Massachusetts is already 20 miles away and more than 300 feet deep, doing something else. Third trade, first strike. March 2011, Libya. The first night of Operation Odyssey Dawn. 110 Tomahawks are launched at Gaddafi's air defense system, and a substantial portion of them start from submarines quietly positioned off the Libyan coast. Radar operators on shore never understood who was firing at them. They understood only that they were being hit and that it was not stopping. By morning, Libya's air defense had ceased to exist as a system. The rule of the first night of any air campaign is simple. Submarines fire first because only they can stay silent until the very moment of launch. Massachusetts carries 12 such arguments. One boat of this class near a hostile coast turns the entire shoreline of a country into a vulnerable point. Somewhere right now, an officer in the Chinese Navy is being told that a Virginia-class submarine may be 20 miles from his ship group. He cannot confirm it. He cannot disprove it either. For him, that is an ordinary Tuesday. Massachusetts makes such Tuesdays longer. A $30 game controller. And now a detail that is hard to believe on a ship worth $3.5 billion. The photonix masts on Virginia-class submarines are controlled with an ordinary Xbox controller. Not something similar to a game controller, literally the same kind from an electronics store for $30. Originally, the Navy ordered a special joystick for this task, and it cost $38,000 a piece. Then, someone looked at 20-year-old operators who had grown up with a console in their hands and asked the obvious question. Young sailors mastered the controller in minutes, without manuals and courses. That is how the United States submarine fleet saved thousands of dollars on every console and got an interface the crew has known since childhood. The life of these 135 people is a separate universe. Underwater, there is no day and no night, so the crew lives by artificial days. Watch, training, sleep, and then the same cycle again for months without a single ray of sunlight. The boat produces her own oxygen by splitting seawater with electricity. She produces fresh water by desalinating the ocean. The only thing that truly limits the endurance of a nuclear submarine is food. Supplies are taken for roughly 90 days, and near the end of a deployment, salad becomes the main subject of dreams on board. There is one doctor for the entire boat, and the nearest hospital may be a week's travel away. There is not a single porthole. Over 33 years of service, nobody from the crew will ever look outside. People live for months inside a weapon, and that weapon, by the way, has a rich bloodline. What they did not say at the ceremony. A few facts that were not spoken into the microphone on the pier. The Navy had not used the name Massachusetts for almost 80 years. The previous bearer was the battleship BB-59, a veteran of the Pacific that earned 11 battle stars and now stands as a museum in Fall River in the same state. The new boat is the 25th Virginia-class submarine, and after the old Helena was decommissioned in the summer of 2025, this class became the most numerous active type of nuclear submarine on the planet, and there is more. Under the AUKUS agreement in the early 2030s, Australia will buy 3 boats from this family, the first time in history that the United States will share a nuclear-powered submarine with another country. And at the shipyards, they are already welding together the 5th block of Virginia-class boats with an additional missile section. Those boats will carry not 12 Tomahawks, but up to 40, and all of this is happening against a piece of arithmetic that Washington does not like. To keep up with the plan, the shipyards must deliver 2 boats per year, but so far they are producing noticeably fewer. Every hull is worth its weight in gold. Literally, 1 ton of Massachusetts cost more than 1 ton of pure silver. And there is one final, almost philosophical detail about how it all ends. 2 endings. The wooden Constitution has outlived everyone. 228 years in service, and nobody plans to retire her. Massachusetts will not be given that much time. Exactly 33 years. That is how long the reactor core will live. Then the Navy will remove the boat from service, cut out the entire reactor compartment, seal it, and bury it in the desert at the Hanford site in Washington state. Rows of similar steel barrels from her predecessors already lie there. And from the air, that reactor graveyard looks like a storage yard for giant tin cans. The rest of the hull will be cut up and melted down, perhaps into razor blades, which has already happened to warships before. And on the slipways in Groton and Newport News, the next hull in this series is being welded together right now. But all of that comes later. For the next 3 decades, Massachusetts will dissolve into the Atlantic, the Pacific, and beneath the ice of the Arctic. Listening, recording, occasionally reminding foreign admirals that the ocean is much smaller than they would like to think. She will return to this pier in a few months. A 3-paragraph press release will come out about her deployment, and it will not contain a single word about where she was or what she did. And now one simple question to finish. If this is what they showed us in port with a brass band and television cameras, imagine what they did not show us. Write in the comments everything you think about this, and subscribe to the channel for the wealthiest. Here we talk about luxury, wealth, and the lives of the most influential people on the planet. Thank you for watching, and right now, watch our previous episodes which have already appeared on your screen.